know it's a couple days old, but how do you feel you scrimmaged the other day?
I thought the scrimmage went well. We did some really good things on defense. I thought we tackled pretty well. A couple missed ones we got to get cleaned up, but overall, I thought the tackling was really well, and that's what you want to see. When we go live, that's the piece we haven't got as much yet. Caused a couple turnovers. Coach Frost put us in some good situations that we need to teach from and get that dialed in, because with this older group, it's going to be a little bit more about getting lined up and executing the defense and more about mastering the situations as we move forward. So I think a little more of that work is necessary, but I was pretty pleased.
What are you still trying to learn in the next week or two about this unit?
About this unit, probably what are we going to try to learn is probably who's the next guys up, because there's, that first string, even though it's not solidified yet, there's still a lot of guys battling for reps, probably a lot of guys that deserve reps in games. Don't know if we're going to get all of them, to play, because there's so many guys that are playing at a high level right now. But just who's going to be those next group in, and then are you that next guy in, and can you play on special teams because you're going on the trip?
You said before that the nose tackle in this defense has to be the heavyweight champ of the world. Why is that? What does that mean?
When we're playing against big people and we're in 3-4 spacing, that guy's responsible for 2A gaps a lot of times, and he's got to really control that center. So that's got to be a man there, and he's got to understand, he's kind of like the center on offense. His name's not going to get in the paper a whole bunch, but he's going to really help the team.
On that point, Damian, a lot of people talking about how Damian's in much better shape this year. How do you balance trying to make those types of players more mobile, but also ensure that they can still take up that space and command those forehands that they need to command?
Well, that's why we got the strength and conditioning guys and the nutritionists, but they've done a great job with all those D linemen of making sure they keep their bulk, and they also are being able to move, and with Damian just being able to play 8 reps at a time instead of 2, and he's done a really good job of that so far this fall.
What looks different about him this year?
His body looks different. He looks more twitchy. He looks more lean. He just looks like he's able to play hard. If we leave him in there for 2 or 4 or 8, he's able to go the whole time, and I think that's a huge win for him and us.
I know Tyreek Johnson's only been around for 9 practices, so what stands out to you about him so far?
Well, obviously he's got some experience in the league. He's played in games, so the situation's really not too big for him, as it is sometimes with a new guy coming in the program, whether they're from a smaller school or a freshman. So he's got a lot of confidence. He's got a lot of grit to him, and he also knows the technique really well. It's just learning a new language probably for him with the defense. But he's a really good football player. He's got really good movement skills. He's done some really nice things in 9 practices.
JoJo last year felt like he never really left the field hardly. Do you want the sort of same workload on him, or with a longer season, are you trying to give him some breaks?
Yeah, I think with the longer season, it's going to be hard for him to have that workload. But I think we've developed some depth at that position. Isaac Gifford, Javen Wright, Simon Odie, John Bullock have all done a really good job there. So I think we have the opportunity to get JoJo a little rest this year and hopefully get all those guys playing on special teams as well. But I think you're right. It's going to be hard for him to take the same workload with the full season.
How deep do you think the D-line can go? Like, how many are you feeling comfortable with, or how deep do you want it to go, I guess?
I mean, you're definitely talking about 2 platoons at every position up front, and probably a third at most. So it's a pretty deep group. You definitely want to, now that we've developed some depth, you want to get those guys some breaks. You want them to be able to rush the passer and be fresh for that and play the run. But you also want to get the best guys enough reps. So I think that's a good balancing act, and Coach Tuioti and Coach Dawson are doing a good job with rotating those guys right now. And I don't see a huge drop-off between the 1s and the 2s.
How's your team held up health-wise? I mean, have you hit that kind of camp wall where you got a lot of guys kind of having to rest on the second week?
You know what? We haven't had a bunch of guys that have had to rest. Guys get nicked up here and there, and maybe if they get nicked up and they're a vet that's proving themselves, all the kind of things, maybe you shut it down for that day to keep it from getting into something worse. But there hasn't been a lot of guys where we've had to just say, hey, he needs 2 days down or anything like that. I think these guys have done a nice job of taking care of their bodies and getting ready to roll the next day.
Do you feel good about you're in a position with enough veterans where you don't have to force young guys right into the fray right away? And do they Do they kind of understand it, those young guys, sort of like looking at the depth chart? There's a lot of experience around them. Or
To be honest with you, I think, it is a good feeling, obviously, but I think that we're to the point also with maturity that those older guys are taking those younger guys and helping them and saying, take my job, but you're not going to do it. I want you to try to take this thing. I want you to practice hard. I want to see if you can get in the game as a reserve role or special teams, and I'm going to help you, but I know you can't take my job, and I think that's a pretty good feeling.
we were talking, maybe you were asked about him. DeAndre over here was doing interviews. What can he give you? I know last year sort of just got deleted for him with the injury, but what can he bring to the table?
Yeah, so far DeAndre's done a really good job. He's a little different than some of those other guys. He's not quite as big, but he's got a little wiggle to him, and he seems to have a knack to find the ball and to find the open spot in the pass rush. So I think there's definitely a role for him moving forward.
When you guys first got here, you talked about having your defense rotate in and out like hockey lines.
Yep.
I mean, but you really hadn't been able to do that because of the depth. Do you feel like in year 4 we're going to see the hockey lines come in and out this year more?
Yeah, and I think especially up front. Especially up front, outside backers, D-line, inside backers are going to roll, whether that's 4 guys or 3 guys, but you're going to see those guys roll. The DBs has always been a little different story. I think you're going to see those guys get subbed in and out, but that's really not as much of a hockey rotation there because it's so important for those guys to make calls back there. But I think up front you'll definitely see some mass substitutions coming.
For those 7 front spots, would it be like 12, 14, 16? Like, what's the number that you could rotate in for those 7 spots if you had your way right now?
Number of guys?
Yeah. Like, you feel like you're 14 deep, 16 deep, 18 deep?
Yeah, for those 7 spots, I definitely think that there's at least 14. Probably in that up front D line, there's probably at a 15, 16, 17 in there.